Hey there, adventurers, and welcome back to another episode of The Awkward Dungeon Master. This week I am here with my friend Martha. She's making a reappearance.
Yes.
We are going to talk about briefly situations in which players are meant to fail or to run away from encounters. Have we ever done anything like that with you at my table?
Yes, although a lot of the times in campaigns that I've been playing in, it's happened during sessions when I'm not there.
Of course.
Of course.
Stop having a life, Martha.
I know.
D&D is life.
I mean, for you, yes.
I mean, not always.
But yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is I like the game that I play to feel like there's real consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I've played with people throughout the years in different games who want to approach it as I just want to run around this fantasy world and do whatever I want and not have any consequences to what's happening.
Right.
And so if I want to go and steal stuff, I just want to go steal it. And that's not how the real world works.
No.
And for me, at least as a player, the nice thing about D&D is you can explore things and be somebody you're not within a fantasy world, but there's still mechanics that replicate aspects of our world.
There's still social constructs within the game.
Yes, and so being able to navigate a situation carefully can really benefit you, but if you mess it up, or if you stumble into something you shouldn't have, then you're going to have to deal with that, and that kind of shows you who you are as a player and as a character.
And I would argue a little bit as a person, too.
Yeah.
I did talk a little bit last week about unintentionally allowing parts of ourselves to seep into our characters, which I think happens more than people really realize.
We don't talk about that. It's fine.
No, it's fine. It's totally okay.
But right now I'm playing a character who is very different from me. And being able to think about how would he react in those situations? Yes. He is basically a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist who is a hermit and is so overwhelmed with the idea of being around people that he's just spent his whole life avoiding that and wears a ridiculous tinfoil hat. It's fine.
It's clearly, I don't know what you're talking about.
But whereas player Martha wants to run into conflict and save things, playing as a character who avoids everything, it's been really good to encounter those kind of situations where maybe it's not the smartest decision to just run in and start swinging.
Right. Yeah. He's very secretive, too.
He is. He's got some secrets that have been slowly revealed over time, but...
My favorite was drunk at campus night. That was the best.
Yes. There was a night that my character got very drunk in-game and just kind of spilled everything. Because up until that point, he was so secretive that all of the characters were like, this guy might murder us. Like, he doesn't seem that dangerous, but there's something off.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to get back to the topic for the week, not that a campus isn't thoroughly enjoyable.
It's fine.
I mean, one of these days, if anybody gives a crap, maybe we'll do, character bios. That could be fun.
I think that'd be fun.
That'd be fun. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. There's some channels that do, campaign diaries, too.
I like that.
Yeah. I think they're fun to watch. It's interesting to see what other people have going on in their games. But one thing I've run into as an issue as a dungeon master with creating scenarios where players are meant to run away is people don't always pick up on that hint. And they wind up in situations where they have a very finite amount of time to GTFO before everybody dies.
Yeah.
So you always have to, ride this balance between TPK and cowardice. I don't know how to really balance that. So as a player, what do you think are things that are helpful for you?
I think the biggest thing is there are times that I will look at you and I am constantly looking at Alicia and being like, she's smiling. What does this mean? And sometimes it means nothing. And she's like, why are you staring at me?
Not bad.
And sometimes it's, I know something good is going to happen. And so I use that a little bit as kind of an indication of maybe I should proceed with caution. But I think the biggest thing is us being able to check in and really be like, hey, are we, as a party, coming up with a cohesive plan for what we're going to do.
Right.
And at what point, if we get in too deep, how are we going to approach that? And I think that that's the biggest thing is building a crew of people who can work collaboratively as opposed to just, I'm going to go in and do this and screw what you guys want. And as a DM, like, really being selective about, like, who are you cultivating in your game is big. How are people communicating? I think the communication is the biggest thing of, are people communicating respectfully and thoughtfully with each other?
I feel very blessed to have the group we have right now because, honestly, our home group that we have at the moment is the best group of players that I've ever had. You guys all work really well together, and we actually tend to stay on task more often than not. Yeah. So that's nice.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that you don't put us into situations that are so wildly above our skill level that we would just immediately get decimated.
Right.
But you also don't do it to the point that we can just blow in, murder these big bads, and then everything's fine. And so we have those options where we can kind of test the waters and be like, oh wait, never mind. And sometimes the baddies will chase us, and then we're like, oh crap, we gotta get out of here. They're still coming. But you give us a range of options so that we can choose what to do, and then within that it's like, okay, here are the consequences based on those options.
Right.
So it's not just you controlling what happens, it's you giving a wide variety of choices we can make, and then us dealing with those consequences of those choices we make.
And see, you didn't see me early on in my DMing career. That took time.
Yeah.
It really does just take time to find that balance between making sure that everybody's not steamrolling everything and that you're giving everyone options for things to do. So that they don't feel railroaded. Like, this is the pen that we're going to play in today. Please do not go outside of the fences.
Well, and I remember it was early on in playing with Alicia's home game. There was this giant binder, I believe it was, of stuff that she had planned.
Oh, yeah.
And she had this incredibly thought out plan for where she envisioned the campaign going.
Yeah.
And we made some choices that messed that up, and she literally was like, well, and then dropped it on the ground and was like, okay, we're moving on. And so I think that's the other big thing is being able to correct on the spot. If something isn't working or if players aren't going down that road, like, you can't be so rigid that you're just like, but you have to do this. Like, you're building a world and you're guiding us to some extent, but you aren't controlling the choices that we make. Letting the game flow naturally.
Yeah.
And making course corrections as needed.
Yeah, I think it's important to not, even when you're trying to create a situation where you want the players to fail or come up against something that they can't overcome immediately, I think it's important as a DM to still give them space to triumph. But what I always struggle with is getting the point across that they're kind of screwed. And I try to do that narratively by saying, like, you keep beating the shit out of this guy and he doesn't look like it hurt.
Yeah, I think
he's fine.
I think that those
letting a couple players drop. And just, like, more and more stuff keeps happening.
Yeah, I do remember in our last game with a different character, I got very close to death, and I thankfully had, I don't even remember what item it was, but it basically kept me from...
Oh, wasn't it from the pearls that I gave you guys?
No, this was with Callie.
Oh, Callista.
Yeah.
Mm.
I had
Oh, you had the periaptive wound closure?
Yes, the periaptive wound closure. And that was the only thing that really saved me.
Yeah.
But that was the first time as a player that I was like...
Fuck.
Oh, okay, so I'm going to have to be a little bit more conscious about this. And so I think that changed the way I approach playing, of not being so... I tended to go back and forth between being too timid or just running into situations.
Right.
And I learned after that to really read the signals and understand the clues that you were giving us, like you said. You were describing, man, he's just not going down, or... You know,
he's healing every round.
He's healing every round.
There's a lot of creatures that have healing abilities at the top of their turn.
Yeah, and so there's a little bit of almost training your players to pick up on those little signals so that they can make a more informed decision without you literally saying, yeah, there's no way.
I always struggle because I don't want to make it overly dramatic where I'm like, don't do this, you're gonna die. Are you listening?
Well, I think that takes away some of the choices that we can make.
Right, too. And I want to make it more natural, too. It's like, you notice this offhand. Do you give a fuck?
Yeah.
In that moment, you need to decide whether or not that little piece of information is important to you. And a lot of people don't. They're like, I'm doing A, B, C, D on my turn, and they just gloss over everything narratively that I have to say.
Yeah.
just narration. Like, it doesn't have any effect on the game.
Yeah, so I think really just connecting those descriptors to what is directly happening in the game, and then connecting that directly to, well, you made this choice, so now this is happening.
Right.
And I think also just as a DM, standing your ground. Because I've played in games where somebody really wanted it to be a certain way, and they kept pushing and pushing for, well, I want this to happen. And you'd say, no, like, that doesn't make sense within the mechanics. It doesn't make sense within the game. And so just because players don't want a situation or an encounter to be something they should run away from, standing your ground and saying, no, this is the reality of the situation. You have to make a choice.
Right.
Is a big deal.
We had something similar happen. It wasn't necessarily like a situation where the players were meant to fail, but I was running Princes of the Apocalypse. And one of the big elementals that they were supposed to kill and send back to its elemental plane was an earth elemental, and they were underground. And it says in the book, after 1 minute, the cave collapses. So they had 1 minute of in-game time to get the fuck out of there, or they were all gonna die. And in their panic, because I did the thing where I pulled out a timer that was exactly 1 minute real time, and they're like, what's that about? And I'm like, I just started describing like the cave shaking and rubble and stuff starting to fall from the ceiling, and they immediately started to panic to the point where they left someone behind who was unconscious.
Oh no.
Yeah, so...
But I think that that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah. Is
players aren't going to be invested unless it feels real. And obviously we are not running around a fantasy world as dwarves and all that stuff. That'd be really cool.
It'd be super cool.
But I think that making it feel real and connecting emotionally with the players is really important, because that was a situation in which they could have said, okay, here's what we're doing. And instead they reacted emotionally as you might in that situation.
They all panicked and started to react independently of one another instead of working together. One character was like, they had an animal familiar who had also fallen unconscious. And she's like, I'm going to grab my fire beetle familiar, and I'm going to grab this NPC that we've been traveling with, and I'm getting out of here. And I was like, what's your strength score? Yeah. And it wasn't high enough. And I'm like, you have to pick one.
Yeah.
You can't take them both.
Yeah.
So in that moment, she had to choose between her familiar and a friend.
Yeah.
So like...
And that really gets down to you're having to make a true decision in that moment about what your character would do. And those are the moments that really challenge you as a player and really define who your character is as a person.
Absolutely.
If every encounter you guys run from, or every encounter you just defeat without having any challenge, like, there's no fun and there's no growth in that.
Right.
So having that balance and having those moments of, we have to make a choice, and those choices are going to affect the rest of the game, can be really powerful, engaging moments for players.
And I think some people are starting to realize, especially in our home game, because we're also dedicated to the RP aspect of everything. Because I've had other tables where people just don't really role play. Honestly, for me, if I wanted that kind of play, I would play a video game. Because it's all very railroady and it's ABCD. Yeah. There's no real interacting with the characters within the game. There's no character development or anything like that. But
so those moments of that kind of fight or flight and coming up against something that you can't face, even as a party, those are kind of character defining moments where you really have to make choices that you don't want to be making.
Nope.
So, especially for players that maybe are hesitant to really get into the roleplay aspect of it, that could be an option, just so that they're being faced with tough decisions.
Tapping into that visceral reaction from people is hard, but as a DM, it's always so satisfying whenever I can manage to do it. So I'm like, yes, they're connecting with the game. We're doing stuff that you can only do at RPG tables.
Yeah, and there's something really powerful and beautiful about that in just coming together and being like, okay, we're going to handle this and we're going to figure this out somehow.
I think you definitely need the right group of people for that, though.
Yeah. That really depends on communication and having the right team of people.
I agree. Well, I think that covered the topic pretty well.
And then some.
And then some. Yeah. A little bit of swirling here and there, but
I mean, that wouldn't be us if it wasn't.
No, it's true. Totally true.
Yeah.
It's not like last time when we talked about how crazy we were as human beings.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Yeah. Was it like last February or something?
Oh my goodness. It's been
some shit like that.
About a year. Yeah.
My channel will be going for a year in January.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That's crazy.
I think you're on like the 3rd or 4th video.
I was. I think it was maybe the 4th, I want to say.
Without going back and looking.
We kept having so many camera issues because it kept... The camera kept shutting off, and so we lost some incredible footage.
We did. I had the audio, but I didn't have the video to go with it. It's stressing. But anything else we want to add to the conversation?
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you guys have anything to add to the conversation, please throw that down in the comments. This is Martha. I am the Awkward Dungeon Master, and until next time, keep it rolling, adventures. Did you just laugh at me?
I loved it.
Welcome. You want me to leave that in?
Sure. There's going to probably be a lot of like, oh crap, we should edit that out.
No.
Okay. I always love when they're like, oh, we're going to edit that out in post, and then they leave it in.
Yeah, I always leave that shit in these days. I'm like, oh, no, I'll save it for like a blooper reel later.
Yes.
And then I never do, because that's way too much work. So now I just tack them on at the end.
Yeah.
Like, I was weird and stupid and awkward, but it's funny, so we're just going to put it right here.
I mean, that's part of your charm, so it's fine.
Oh, I'm charming. When did that happen?